Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're venturing into a really fascinating web of information you've brought us. It's quite a collection of documents.
Yeah, it really,
They seem to connect ideas that, well, on the surface look pretty disparate. We're going to explore things like astrology and personal transformation, then shift to some serious allegations around a murder case up in Norfolk County, Massachusetts.
Right, the John O'Keefe case.
Exactly. And even touch on some let's say, intriguing esoteric concepts, like Saturnian spells and breaking karmic loops.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
And the sources, as you said, are quite varied. We've got excerpts from a book looking at astrology and Kundalini energy.
Oh, yeah?
A lot of material on the John O'Keefe case trial transcripts, news articles, different analyses, plus some historical background on Canton, Massachusetts, and, yeah, these explorations of occult ideas.
So our mission here is to try and, weave these different threads together, see if we can find some surprising connections, maybe get some insights into personal growth, how power works in society.
And maybe how hidden truths sometimes come to light.
Exactly. We want to try and give you, our listeners, a clearer picture of the forces at play, both, inside us and out in the world.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's dive in. Part one, maybe we can start with the personal energetic side of things. Kundalini astrology.
Let's do it. So that astrology source talks about Kundalini rising. And one interesting point it makes is that these big energy shifts, they can happen spontaneously.
Not just for people actively, like meditating or doing specific practices?
Exactly. It says it can happen to anyone. The author mentioned seeing it in clients during Uranus opposition transits in their charts, particularly.
Uranus, the planet of sudden shakeups and awakenings.
That's one. So it suggests these energy shifts can be linked to specific planetary timings.
And the source notes these experiences aren't always easy, are they? Can be tough, especially if they happen in childhood.
Yeah, potentially traumatic, it says. But they can also lead to significant spiritual and intellectual evolution, like that pressure cooker idea.
Intense pressure, big transformation.
Okay, so maybe a key takeaway for listeners could be if you go through really intense personal upheaval, maybe it's not totally random. It could link to these bigger cosmic cycles, perhaps offering a way to understand it.
That's a good way to put it. And the text also says Kundalini rising isn't always, fireworks and drama.
Yeah.
It differentiates between subtle experiences and the more classic descriptions.
Okay, so it can be less obvious. Then the source brings up the solar plexus chakra, our personal power center.
Right. Your gut feelings, your sense of self.
And it suggests this is often blocked for most people until midlife. Why then?
Well, the idea presented is that midlife is often when we sort of confront our need for personal power or maybe recognize it more clearly. The source frames it as a real opportunity then, a chance to clear that chakra by really stepping into personal integrity, stopping manipulation in relationships.
So being authentic, basically.
Yeah. And there's a crucial point made about power itself. Like love, the source says, it's unlimited in essence.
It only gets destructive when we try to hoard it or, use it to control people. The key, it emphasizes, is offering power freely, but with integrity.
Empowering, not dominating. Makes sense. Okay, then the discussion moves to Chiron, the wounded healer in astrology.
Exactly. Chiron has this really unusual, erratic orbit.
Right.
And the source talks about chirotic spiritual breakthroughs. These seem linked to Chiron making stressful aspect squares, oppositions to its place in your birth chart, leading up to the Chiron return.
Which happens around age 50.
Typically, yeah, around 50 or 51. But because Chiron's orbit is so wonky, the timing of those lead-up breakthroughs varies a lot from person to person.
Okay. So it's not like a fixed schedule for everyone.
Not at all. It makes that whole process leading up to the return very individual, very unique.
A personalized journey of growth. Got it. The source also mentions the big three astrological aspects: conjunctions, squares, oppositions.
Yeah, the standard ones. They're seen as times when energy gets intensified, potential turning points.
Conjunctions bring things together. Squares mean tension and challenges.
Yeah, it can spur growth.
That's right.
And oppositions often highlight conflict, maybe a need for balance. The author just notes their own work confirms these are important for understanding life's transitions.
And one last point in this section. It connects early repression. Like parents reacting badly when teenagers start expressing their own dreams. It connects that to the second Saturn opposition, which happens around ages 43 to 45. That feels like a really significant time.
It's presented that way. The idea is if you felt shut down earlier for being yourself, it can create this deep belief that, it's not okay to be me.
Mm.
So that second Saturn opposition becomes this major window, a chance to reclaim that inner strength, access parts of yourself you might have buried.
Reconnecting with your authentic self. Okay, so we've got individual energy shifts, personal power, astrological timings. Now, we're going to shift gears pretty significantly, right?
Yeah, quite a turn.
Into these documents about the John O'Keefe case, and this really specific, intriguing reference to the year 1981 at the Norfolk Superior Courthouse. Seems totally different, but maybe we'll find some threads.
Well, this is where the O'Keefe's material introduces concepts like a karmic vault and a frequency lock, all tied to something called Box 1981.
The karmic vault. That sounds intense. What's the core idea there?
According to the source material, John O'Keefe himself saw 1981, that specific year or box, as representing a containment spell.
Okay, a containment spell. To contain what?
His assertion, as presented, was that it was designed to suppress the integration, or maybe the awareness, of different control systems merging. He mentions MKUltra.
Which was the CIA's mind control experiments, right?
Yes, documented covert experiments. He links that to what he calls legal reprogramming and a new phase of media-controlled compliance. So 1981 was supposedly an attempt to hide the merging of these control systems across generations.
That's a massive claim, and the documents mention a gap in archival records between 78 and 81.
Yes. And the analysis we have suggests this gap wasn't just, sloppy record keeping. It's framed as the potential implantation phase for this whole alleged control system.
So the groundwork was laid in those missing years, and 81 was when they tried to sort of seal it off, hide the full scope.
That's the theory presented, a system supposedly spanning legal, psychological, media, even military sectors.
And how did this containment spell actually work, according to O'Keefe's ideas?
The sources talk about ritualized exclusion, like names deliberately missing from records from that time.
Missing names, why?
The suggestion is that the people whose names are missing might be connected to lineages involved in expanding this covert state control. By leaving them out, the system aimed to, sever connections, hide certain bloodlines or individuals.
Wow. Okay, and then it gets even more esoteric with this idea of Saturn's frequency being used for karmic binding and time loops called chrono-bonding.
Right. This definitely loops back to the astrological and energetic themes. Saturnian spells, as described here, are like energetic programs rooted in time, designed for karmic binding.
Using Saturn's energy, like the themes of time, structure, limitation.
Metaphorically, yes.
Yeah.
Harnessing that energy. The idea is that these themes were intentionally woven into this alleged spell to make it last, make it binding.
And chrono-bonding, what's that?
In this context, it sounds like energetically linking souls or agreements or even locations to repeating cycles, like trapping events or people in recurring patterns.
Like a glitch in the matrix, almost.
Kind of. The theory is that Saturn's energy was deliberately used during specific astrological windows to really anchor this binding effect.
So we've gone from individual astrology affecting us personally to this idea of a collective, maybe institutional spell linked to history and planetary energy. That's a lot to take in.
It is. And it leads directly into the next part, which is about efforts to, undo this alleged spell.
So the documents talk about trying to break it.
Yes. They mention a specific courthouse clearing ritual, apparently aimed squarely at dissolving this potential Saturnian spell linked to 1981.
A ritual to clear a courthouse. You don't hear that every day. What did that supposedly involve?
According to the material, it involved communing with and releasing spirits, specifically mentioning a former courthouse clerk, Oria Thorne.
Oria Thorne, who was she?
The story presented is that she was silenced back in the day for recognizing some kind of wrongdoing at the courthouse. The idea is the building itself held the energetic imprint of that and other past traumas.
So the courthouse itself carries trauma, and speaking her name, bringing her story out, that was important.
Exactly. The source suggests that when her name was spoken, with reverence, acknowledging her truth, a foundational energetic structure broke, the spell maybe, allowing the courthouse to, quote, breathe again.
Wow. So remembrance, acknowledging hidden truths, is seen as the antidote.
That's how it's portrayed, a key to dissolving that negative energy.
And how does Karen Reed's case fit into this narrative? The documents say she's walking a similar karmic corridor to Oria.
The theory presented is that Reed, being tried in the same courthouse where Oria was silenced, is kind of resonating with that old injustice. Her case is seen as potentially bringing these buried patterns back to the surface, testing if things have really changed.
Which brings us back to the characteristics of this Saturnian spell idea. Time loops, Karmic containment, judicial mimicry. It sounds like a system designed to repeat itself.
That's the picture painted, yes. The sources describe these kinds of spells as operating through consent, often silence, or fear.
Consent through silence.
And using physical anchors, like the stone of the building, lead, documents, things within the courthouse itself to hold these timelines in place. It's even suggested that if the intent is malicious, it could link to darker rituals.
But crucially, the material says these spells can be broken. That feels important.
It's very important. The underlying principle offered is that source energy, or divine power, whatever term you prefer, ultimately outranks any planetary influence like Saturn.
So they're not unbeatable.
No. Their power relies on things staying hidden. Bring the truth to light, and they can dissolve. There's even mention of a false basement in the courthouse.
A false basement?
Yeah, supposedly designed to hold secrets, trap souls. Again, emphasizing this theme of hidden things needing to be revealed.
And John O'Keefe's own top notebook, it says he felt it became like a confession booth.
Where he was noting down discrepancies he saw.
So even if he didn't grasp the whole alleged spell thing, his act of just documenting inconsistencies was in itself part of bringing things to light.
That's the suggestion. That meticulous noting, even without the full context, was a step towards revealing what was concealed.
Okay, so we're definitely seeing potential links now between these, let's say, unconventional ideas and a very real modern legal case. Let's broaden out again and look at the historical context provided for Canton, Massachusetts.
Right, the historical documents give us some background. Canton, separating from Stoughton, early political fights, its role in early American industry along Mother Brook.
How does that fit in?
Well, it just shows how even a specific town's history reflects those bigger national patterns, the interplay of different forces over time. Context, basically.
And then there's the Freemason connection mentioned in Canton. A long history, prominent members, things like table lodges.
Yeah, the sources mention that. Freemasonry is this long-standing organization, right, with its own symbols, structures. Sometimes those structures intersect or mirror power dynamics in wider society.
So it's just noting the presence of these kinds of influential networks historically in that community.
Pretty much. It's not making a specific accusation, just acknowledging that layer of history.
Then there's this idea of familial connections, linking historical legal figures in Norfolk County to modern ones, the Thayer family, Prescott canon, and this term karmic echoes.
Yes. The sources hint at possible lineage connections, like between early Thayer sheriffs and Judge Webster Thayer, who presided over the Sacco and Vanzetti trial, suggesting potential generational patterns in legal authority.
Okay.
And similarly, connecting Judge Beverly Cannon, who's involved in the Red case, to her father's career as a Norfolk County prosecutor. It highlights how certain families might have a long-standing presence in the local legal system.
Contributing to these karmic echoes across generations, perhaps?
That's the suggestion put forward to the material, yes.
And we can't ignore the Salem witch trials connection that's brought up. George Jacob Sr. hanged as a wizard? Potential links to later legal figures through marriage land? That's a pretty stark historical echo.
It really is. It points to potentially very deep, long-running family and maybe energetic ties in that whole region, suggesting old injustices might leave an imprint that resonates even today.
So all this context, the esoteric, the historical, the familial, it seems to be building towards the Karen Reed case as a modern focal point.
That seems to be the implication, yes. Framing the Reed case as a possible contemporary example of these deeper patterns, hidden agendas, manipulation within the system, echoing the themes around the alleged 81 spell.
And the specifics within the case itself seem to fuel that interpretation. The whole situation with the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, accusations of bias, his firing, the fall guy theory.
Yeah, that certainly adds to the narrative of something being potentially wrong behind the scenes. The fact that concerns about his conduct were apparently known for a while before action was taken.
Right. The timing of the firing seemed convenient.
It raises questions about whether it was about accountability or more about public relations. And the fall guy idea suggests maybe an effort to contain the damage, protect others.
And that Google search, how long to die in cold? The defense claiming Jennifer McCabe did it before Karen Reed got there, that feels potentially huge.
It's a critical point. If the defense timeline holds up, it implies someone inside the house knew O'Keefe was outside and in danger much earlier than admitted. That changes everything.
Then you have the weird text messages between Brian Higgins and Karen Reed. That coded language people speculated about, and talk of a possible wider federal investigation.
Those texts definitely fueled a lot of theories. The idea they might relate to a federal corruption probe? It's not proven, but it fits the broader narrative of misconduct and cover-up that surrounds the case. And things like the quick sale of Brian Albert's house using a quitclaim deed also struck some observers as unusual.
And the plowed driveway, the evidence tampering allegations, it all paints a picture of information potentially being obscured.
The plowing definitely raises questions about preserving the scene, doesn't it? And the defense pushing hard on third-party culpability, naming Brian Albert, Colin Albert, Brian Higgins, directly challenges the prosecution's story.
Plus the defense claims of animosity from the DA's office.
Right, adding another layer of conflict and complexity.
And finally, circling back almost to where we started, the documents mention ongoing energetic work, rituals, sigils, aimed at clearing the courthouse, now called the House of Remembrance, and the land around it.
Yes, this reflects that belief, again, in using energetic means to address imbalances, whether historical or current. Talking about claiming divine inheritance for the land, seeing it as a space for co-creation with Source. It's about trying to restore harmony and truth on a really fundamental level, according to these sources.
So wrapping this deep dive up, we've traced quite a path, from individual energy work in astrology through allegations of systemic manipulation, hidden history, potential corruption in a specific case.
And these recurring themes of secrets, power, and the struggle for justice. It's quite a tapestry.
It really is, and what strikes me is how these seemingly personal things, like the energetic shifts from the astrology source, are potentially being influenced by or reflecting these much bigger societal and historical currents.
Exactly. The layers we've peeled back suggest this really complex web. It raises some big questions, doesn't it? About power, who's accountable, how much the past really shapes our present.
It definitely makes you think about those core ideas, personal integrity, speaking truth. We talked about them for clearing the solar plexus chakra, for breaking those alleged Saturnian spells.
Right.
And how that might relate directly to what's happening now, the efforts to get the truth out in the Karen Reed case, or any situation where justice feels blocked.
Which leads to maybe a final thought for our listeners to consider. All the intense public focus on cases like this one. Could it be more than just morbid curiosity? Could it reflect some kind of collective stirring?
Like a societal Kundalini rising almost, pushing for what's been hidden to finally come out.
It's a provocative idea, isn't it? And maybe the question for each of us is, what role do we play or can we play in bringing truth to light, whether it's in these big public cases or just in our own lives, our own communities? Something to definitely chew on.